We're back here at the top of the hour. I want to welcome everybody back and sticking with us here at 4 o'clock, the end of day two. And again, we're continuing part two with Josh Gall, Associate Director of Bands at University of Texas at Austin, also co-owner and creator of Ultimate Drill Book. Just as a reminder, tomorrow is our last day of our Inspired to Inspire. Again, starting at 10 o'clock and going till 5 o'clock, we have sessions in color guard, tuba masterclass, flute masterclass, intro to jazz and improv, bringing back Dr. Adrian Ray. Then we have Jack Stamp participating with us, doing a conducting session, as well as a composer's spirit. If you've been kind of hanging on to the 10 minutes prior to the hour, that particular piece of music that you're listening to is one of the pieces that he'll be working on during his sessions that he composed. And at the very end, I'll round it up with Mr. Freddie Green. We'll be doing a session on strategies for an effective sectional prep. And our very own Kayla Clark from Campbell University will be doing effective use of social media as well. I've got some emails and texts and chats about people who are registering today. I will send out first thing in the morning, probably between 8 and 9 o'clock, an update to all the links and the schedule for our day three. It's easier to send it in the morning because we tend to get a lot of people in the evening registering. So instead of filling your email, I'll start your day with an email from me. There you go. So without further ado, let's get back to Josh Gall here for our last session. Last hour, Josh kind of talked to us about what the UDB app can do from attendance, calendar, and how it can help us as an instructor. Now we're going to kind of reverse the side and kind of see some of the things that really benefit our students to become more effective learners. And then maybe, obviously, I did get a quick question along the way, Josh. And I've been through several of your presentations that you touch on this. You did it with CBDNA and such. But two things, how this can help during our situation of COVID as an instructor, and so our students feel better using this as an effective tool. And, once we get past COVID, why this is environmentally a great way to go for us band directors who started writing this by hand and making 300 copies for their dot books and all that type of stuff, which I think was the inspiration to move forward. And like I said, this is a game changer, and I'm handing it back over to you.
Cool. Thanks so much. So like Dr. Phillips was saying, for those of you who were with us the last hour, I'll sort of share similar information again, but from the sort of the student's perspective, so you can see what that's like. And if there are students on this call, we'll talk a little bit about what some of those things look like and how you can sort of best, one, be a participant in the rehearsal, but then also two, help others, because of course, anybody who, is a robust educator is going to say that you don't have to have a title to lead, and you don't have to have a title to help influence and inspire other people. So what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen with you in just a second, but I'm actually going to answer maybe one of the questions that you just asked, just to give a little bit greater context. I was starting to touch on this a little bit last call, but we actually just finished a study with the Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District here, which is in the Houston area of Texas, and they have 12 high schools there. And when they switched over from using their paper methods, whether it was coordinate sheets or drill charts, for drill and for music, their copy costs per student throughout the season approximated between $25 and $30 per school per student, and the UDB cost per student is $10. And so they were immediately, just in their first year, were saving around 68% of their copy costs for the district budget. But the number that was like really astonishing to us when they sort of put pen to paper to figure this out is that they estimated that in years past, the amount of time that it took to print, drill, copy it, cut it, distribute it, not only the first time, but throughout the full season, they estimated about 550 hours of 550 man hours for these kinds of things to happen throughout the year for their district. And as I said in the past session, which I'll reiterate now, the process of getting drill and music from Pyware into UDB takes about 5 seconds. If you've got slow internet, maybe 10 seconds. So it's, so you're still going to be on the plus side of this equation. And for directors and for students and for administrators who are really interested in sort of the green initiative, which I think most of us are. We're interested in sustainability. We're interested in recycling, whether it's campus-wide or even just personally and locally. We have seen so many schools have great success with implementing UDB app through using some kind of a green fee initiative on their campus. And so for us, even at UT Austin, 50% of our UDB app subscription is paid for by a campus green fee initiative, because we are not using 30,000 sheets of paper every week or whatever it was. And so I always recommend, even if you're at a high school, going to your administrator and saying, hey, we're getting ready to do this. Even though maybe the copy costs are not in our budget specifically, somebody is paying for that. Somebody's paying for paper, somebody's paying for toner, somebody's paying for the rental cost of the machine, maybe maintenance or whatever it might be. And we'd like to go this route. This route's going to be, one, infinitely more green. We're not going to be wasting as much paper. And this is going to rely on the students to use their own devices, which of course we know that they're going to take great care of. They're always going to have it with them, and they're always going to have battery. So we want them to be more reliant on the information that's on the computer that's in their pocket, and that they've got readily available. So those are sort of some thinking and talking points for why UDB, even outside of the COVID environment. And I'll talk a little bit more about, like, if I'm a student and we're only rehearsing once a week, but I still want to be really prepared, what are some ways that I can sort of become a better performer just on my own using UDB? So I'll talk about that in just a second. But those are all things that are worth considering, especially if you're thinking about implementing UDB in your program for the fall or the spring for like indoor percussion, indoor color guard, those kinds of things. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then I'll just reiterate, as I said in the last call, at any point, if you have a question, just throw it in the chat or just unmute yourself and chime in. I will pause in some sort of strategic spots. So feel free to throw that question in the chat, and Dr. Phillips will cue me, and we'll sort of go from there. So let me share my screen again real quick. All right. You see my screen again? Cool. Beautiful. All right. So I'm signed into the free downloadable version of UDB app, and I'm connected to just a fake test ensemble. And you'll see here, in this example, my name is actually UDB student, but normally it would say Josh Gall. UDB App Pro is the ensemble name, and then you would see a picture there of myself. So I'll start by talking about some of the management features that we've built in, just because they're new. And when I was talking earlier about the calendar and attendance piece, those are of course some of the more popular features that have been built in. And I'm just going to show what those look like now from the student's perspective. So if I tap on calendar, I will, as a student in this ensemble, see just the events that I was invited to. So I can see a full band rehearsal, and I can see the woodwind sectionals that I've been invited to. If I tap on that, if I want to find more information, of course, I'll see the time, of course, the date. But then when I tap on location, it'll show me where that rehearsal is, right? So that can be really helpful if you've got some rehearsals that happen maybe on the parking lot. Some rehearsals are going to happen at the stadium. Some rehearsals are going to maybe be in the band hall or whatever it might be. So this is going to provide me with that information as a student, so I know where to be and within what time parameters. When it's time for me to check into an event, I can go to the attendance part, and I can see up to that point my attendance record for that full event, right? I'm sorry, for the full year. You'll see in the top right corner a 3, a 1, and a 4, and that means that I've been absent 3 times, tardy once, and present 4 times. And I can see my attendance record down here by scrolling back and forth to see what events I was marked present, tardy, or absent for. And if I wanted to check into an event, I would go up here to that little check-in icon, tap on it in the top right corner. I would say I'm checking in for woodwind sectionals. And you can see in this example, I'm not within that geofence that I set up earlier because I'm at home, and I chose to set up the event on campus at UT. And so you'll see that I can't check in. And you'll notice also that the woodwind sectionals that I was just looking at earlier, it shows that I've been marked absent. Now, if you have a student who maybe is going to check into rehearsal, but they're going to be, there's maybe some kind of a course conflict and they always show up late, but you've worked out something with them, all that you need to do is that student would come up to anybody who's signed into UDB as a director, and then they would just move you over from absent to present. And then that they can do that manually, and that updates automatically for everybody. So again, this can be really helpful for a student to be able to see their full attendance record. Here's everything that I've been present for, things tardy, and things absent. And when the directors see this and when they export this attendance record, it shows the timestamp so that way you know that the student was there at 6:28 for a 6:30 rehearsal start time. Cool, not a problem. So we've tried to make this very easy for students and directors, especially when it comes to security, because the student, all they have to do is click on the check-in button, and then it just takes a quick snapshot. It's not like it tracks them or anything like that. So that's one of the big new additions to UDB App Pro for students, is the ability to check in to an ensemble rehearsal. Or it could be just a section leader meeting or whatever it might be. So let me get into the UDB part of things. And I'm going to open up a drill file. I'll first show what it looks like to open up a drill file that you've downloaded fresh the first time. So you'll see I just downloaded Movement 3. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mike, sorry.
Real quick about attendance. So just to confirm, if a student comes in late, the director has the ability to go in there and edit it, as in, oh yeah, Kendall said that she was going to be late for rehearsal. She saw me. She had to see a professor or something like that, and you can edit it. Are you saying I can make a note, or you can just change it from late to present?
Yeah, you can change it on the fly from tardy to present. And when you export that attendance record, it'll show that they were present. And then instead of a timestamp, it'll say EBD, which means edited by director. Gotcha. So it just means that you overrode the original attendance thing, right? And that attendance record now updates for both you and for Kendall in this example.
So it's a great opportunity that if you're going to be late, you actually have to face the director before or after, right?
Right, right.
Nope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I've just opened up, or I've just downloaded a drill file for the first time, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And you'll see that because I'm signed in as a student, it's going to ask me to choose my performer. So again, all of this information comes directly from Pyware, so the directors don't have to input any of this stuff. You choose the symbol and you choose the label. So in this instance, I might be G4 or M3, right? So at any point, the students can choose their performer, and they can go into the drill, and if they need to switch performers, which color guard often do, or if you're rewriting or restaging something, the students can easily change back and forth between performers. And then once I've chosen that performer, I'll click save, and it brings me in to that drill file. So I'm going to, for purposes of this demo, I'm going to go back to another drill file where I've loaded a few things in here for you guys. So I'll go into Movement 5. And you'll see that because I had already selected baritone 1 or B1, it already selected me for that. And if I wanted to change easily, I just go back into the settings. So of course, for students, we see the information along the top, but maybe most importantly, initially, let me just move forward to a good example. It has selected me so that I don't have to find where I am and zoom in and, and then select that person. So it finds that student automatically and it pre-selects them and it shows the information that's most important to that student, that path information. So I can see that I was coming directly from this angle and I'm going directly to this. Now for students who are, performers in this case, you may notice that the front sideline is on the top of my screen. So I'm looking at this from the performer's perspective, right? And this is chosen by default, right? And where this is really helpful is that in the rehearsal, I, as a student, from the very first rep, I should be practicing my direction change. So I can practice my -1 and my +1. So I know that it's a 90-degree slide and I'm going slightly back and to the right. So we always encourage our students, not only our student leadership, but every student in the band, when we set up a new drill set, as soon as you get there, start practicing that direction change, because that's really where oftentimes things will break down. Of course, over the course of maybe a 10 count move from page 36 to page 37, things could break down. But without that direction change happening and without that change in energy okay, it's a larger step size going to the next page, we know that if we don't set those things up correctly, then we are likely going to be sort of fighting an uphill battle at that point. So again, as a student, I'm seeing the part of the shape that I'm in. I see my path information. Of course, the counts and the measures are still there, which for directors and staff members are there whenever they tap on a performer, right? And then I can also see my coordinates for all of these pages, and I can go into count mode to break things down count by count. Find my halfway point if I'd like, right? I can scroll through this. I can tap on anything to jump to that spot. So as a student, we want to be able to break these things down in the context of those around us. But there are instances where we might want to be able to further isolate. And I talked a little bit about this in the last call, where we created a custom view that shows maybe just a particular section. And I'll show that again in case there's anybody new on this call. But I'm going to show you some things that are built in that are specific to students inside UDB. So I'm just going to close this screen by just tapping on it, and I'll go back into page mode just so that I'm sort of on a certain page rather than counts. And I'm going to show you the way that we have created for where students can more hyper focus on just their particular responsibilities as a performer. So as we know, if we're looking at everybody in the drill, we know that we're in the UDB view, which means that I'm signed in as a student and I'm seeing everybody around me, right? But if I wanted to maybe isolate and just see what my responsibilities were and hide all of the other performers, I can do that. So I'm going to tap on the UDB logo in the top right corner, and then you'll see down on the right side, there's a little settings or a gear icon. And when I tap on that, you'll see this is where I can change songs quickly. I can change performers. I can, of course, change the perspective. But I'll show you a couple of other things that might help. So I can tap on something called coordinate sheet rounding. And this is going to allow me as a performer to say, you know what, like, I really want to just think maybe like 2.25 steps is like really confusing to me, or whatever it might be. So maybe I want to round things to the nearest half step. So here's where, as a performer, I can choose that and say, you know what, like this number system works better for me. Or if I want to be really, really precise, I can round things to the nearest 10th step. So, because as we know, there's shades of gray between 2.25 steps and 2.5 steps. That's 2.25 steps, but a little bit more this way, or whatever it might be, right? And so each student can go in and customize the way that their coordinate sheet is rounded, and that can be really helpful. Then we'll go down and we'll see the option to show or hide sections, which I'll dive into in a moment. But excuse me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like I'm a brand new student to the marching band. And regardless of the size of the group, whether it's 30 people or 300 people, sometimes it can just be a lot to see everything happening around me, and I want to just become more focused on my responsibilities. So you'll see there's an option here where it says increase my symbol size, which I want to do, which is just going to make me bigger on the drill chart. And then I'm going to turn off show surrounding performers, which does exactly what you think it does, right? So now when I go back to the drill, you'll see that I've got an empty field around me, but it's just me as a student, right? And so this is going to go a little bit into, Dr. Phillips, what you were asking about how can I as a student during these times, maybe where we're not going to rehearse as much, or there's limited rehearsal ability because of COVID-19 stipulations, where I need to learn my stuff, right? And so here's a perfect example of this, where I can go through the entire drill and I can watch it. I can listen to the audio. It'll keep me in the center of the screen so that way I can always see what my path information is. That's a hold, so that's not very exciting, right? But I can watch and hear what the responsibilities are for me as a performer without anybody else, without having to focus or see anybody else. So when I was giving a recent presentation to some folks in CBDNA, I was encouraging them that students can do this anywhere if they've got access to just a small little open field next to their dorm, or if they've got access to an intramural field, or if they want to go into a gymnasium, or if they've got access to a big garage, whatever it might be. The students have the ability to practice these things and become, again, just hyper focused on what their responsibilities are. And at any point, they can go back and just turn the other performers on around them just by going into the settings, show surrounding performers, and then boom, we're back there, right? So depending on how students are learning, it would allow them the opportunity to not be as overwhelmed as easily by having to look at so many different people sometimes, right? And this is something that we have seen be particularly helpful for us at the University of Texas, where students have maybe missed 2 rehearsals on a particular week because they had exams, or maybe they were out of town due to a family illness or something like that. And we said, hey, like, of course, the absences are excused. We're happy for you to join us, but you're going to have to put the work in on your own, right? For the game on Saturday. So they've got 1 rehearsal now to learn the entirety of the show. And when they show up, because they've been looking at that view that shows just their responsibilities, and then they're able to toggle back and forth between just myself and then seeing everybody else around me, they've been able to jump into the drill as if they've not missed any rehearsal, right? So that has been critically important for our students who are trying to earn a spot back into the band. Maybe they were an alternate and they want to prove to everybody else that they want to work their way into the ensemble, or for students who have missed rehearsal for certain reasons, and then they're going to, they want to be able to catch up. So that's been really, really helpful. And these are all things that you can do, like I said, and regardless of the space that you're in. And so let me find a good example. So just going back to this example here, I, as a student, can study on my own, knowing that when I go to page 37, I cross the yard line on count 7. Here's my step size. And then when I go to page 38, okay, cool. Very similar step size, 8-5 to a 7-5. And this is all information that they don't have access to unless they're looking at UDB. You can't glean that information from a coordinate sheet. You can't glean it from a drill chart, which of course are great tools, and that's what's gotten us where we are. But if we want to be able to learn faster and more efficiently, now you want to engage as a student to say, here's all of these other tools that I have at my disposal, to where, it's like we can essentially do the same thing on Saturday, or the Friday night football game, but even with less time, because we're able to be more efficient as a student performer in this ensemble. So I'll show you a couple of other settings that are really helpful for students. So I'm just going to tap back up in the top right corner and then go to my settings. And I'll scroll down and show you a couple of other things that we haven't looked at yet. Down here is something called show dynamic markers and hide labels during animation. Now, I'm going to just turn off show dynamic markers real quick and go back into the drill. And you'll notice that when I like zoom in, aside from looking at the coordinate in the top right corner, I don't know what yard line is which, right? Because there's nothing that signifies that unless I were on the front of the field and maybe the numbers in Pyware are on the front of the field. So if you go into the settings and go to show dynamic markers, you'll notice now, regardless of where I am in the field, and if I zoom in or zoom out, on the bottom, we always show the yard line numbers that correspond to where I am. So that's really helpful to leave on. We do show that by default, but that's really helpful for students to know as a reference point for themselves, right? And then the thing that was underneath that in the settings, if I go to hide labels during animation, this can be really helpful. What if I'm watching the drill? And of course, in this example, we see everybody's X's, and then we see beneath that, you know, B1 or B3 or whatever. But when I press play, maybe I want the drill just to be a little cleaner. And so this way I can see all of the performers move, but while it's animated, I'm not seeing the symbols and the labels. And at any point, you know, if I pause or just stop the drill, they come back on. Right. So this is particularly helpful for students if there's a dense form, right? If there's a time where they come together as a block or a circle or whatever it might be, and it's just hard to discern where different performers are within that block. So if they have the ability just to turn off the symbols while animating, or I'm sorry, the labels, then that can clean up the way that things look, especially in those more dense situations. And then the last setting I'll show you in the standard menu is the audio playback setting. Now, we really encourage the students, even in rehearsal with all 400 students out on the field, we say, keep your audio on, because when you press play, we want you to be able to hear what that musical phrase is, right? And even with 400 devices out on the field, it's really not that loud, but it's helpful for the students to hear like, okay, it's a 16 count move, cool. Here's what the music is that I play, right? But if we want them to be able to like internalize that and hear that, even if it's sort of in a drill rehearsal or a visual rehearsal, you know, we know that that can help them marry those two ideas together faster. You do have the option to turn it off if you're studying it or whatever it is, like somewhere else. So you can disable that if you'd like. So I'll just show you one other quick thing as it relates to sort of customizing views, and then I'll pause, take any questions that there are, and then I'll show you what it's like to sync sheet music into the app so that way you have both of those things as a reference point. So like you saw earlier, I was customizing the way that things looked for me as that performer. And you saw I had the ability to turn off the surrounding performers. You saw that I could change their colors. But maybe if I'm a section leader and I want to utilize what we call custom views and look at just a particular section, I can create a custom view from scratch that allows me to do that. So you'll see over here on the right side of the screen, I've just pulled up the secondary drawer, and then right beneath the UDB logo, there's a little plus and a document icon. So I'm going to tap on that, and you'll see it takes me into the settings. And at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see that now I'm editing the view or the settings for custom view 1. If I want to edit the settings for the UDB view, I can do that. Custom view 1, I can do that here. So maybe I want to create a custom view that shows just those in my section. So I'm going to go to show/hide sections and just uncheck everybody who's not, in this example, a B or a baritone, because I'm signed in as baritone 1, right? And then quickly, I now see just those performers on the field. No one else is there. But maybe I want to go back and see everybody. UDB view, cool, right? Just my section, right? And, you know, if you wanted to maybe further customize this, like, so I see the logo in the top right corner is custom view 1. If I tap on that, maybe I want to change that. I want to customize it to be, a baritone or a brass. I can just go in and choose a different icon, right? So any one of these that I'd like, right? I'll choose that. So now that view has some, I know what it is that I'm selecting. So each person can choose that view based on whatever their instrument is. So if I'm creating a custom view for just the color guard, easily done. I just choose one of the flags or the rifle or whatever it might, or even the text that says guard. And then you'll see that I've got the ability here on the right side. I've got the UDB view, the marching baritone, and then I've got one more plus document icon. So I can create 2 custom views in addition to the main view that shows all of the drill. So what we always ask or encourage our students to do, have their first view either show everybody or just them as a performer. Their second view shows just their section, and then their third view shows everybody. And I'll do the same example that I did earlier. Shows everybody, but everybody else who's not a baritone player is going to be like a light gray color. So then that way in the drill, I can still see everybody, but I want to maybe just, become a little bit more aware of where my section is. And I'm just going to change everybody into dots because that's really what I prefer. It makes it a little easier in the drill to see that. And so now I can see full drill, but in this view, I'm seeing just the baritones highlighted. The second view shows me just the baritones. First view is full band, right? So that's what we encourage the students to do and the section leaders. Create a view that shows just you or the full band, then just your section, and then the full band, but with you guys highlighted. So as a student, you have lots of options within this to sort of hyper focus on the drill. But if there are also additional things that you need to add to this, you have the ability to add your own notes. So I'll show you that quickly, and then I'll pause for a couple of questions. We go back to the very beginning of this drill file. Down in the bottom right corner, you'll see a little I, which stands for instructions or information. When you tap on the I, you'll see that there's these production notes that come from the drill designer. And if there are text box notes, they show up there as well. What's really nice about this is that if I want to add my own notes, I can do this. I'm going to go into the edit, and I'm going to choose to just type some notes here. And if I wanted to add something like horns up on 5, then I can add that to that page. And then that's going to be there for my reference. One of the things that we have our students do, especially who are new students in the band, is there's also the ability to take a picture. So if I go to the edit icon, tap on the picture, choose a camera, you'll see that I'm taking a picture of my screen, right? And I can take a picture and then throw that into that drill. And at that point, once I've saved that picture, that's there for a reference for me. And I can easily go back into the drill and I can say, for example, one of the things we have our students do is like section leaders, can you guys show the regular marchers, what our carry looks like at this point in pregame? Because we have like a different marching style that we use in pregame than we do for halftime. And so the students are able to take a quick picture, and that stores on that page for that person on that device. It's not showing it because I'm screen sharing right now, but that then just stays on their account, which they can pull up later and say like, okay, cool, here's what the high step looks like, or here's what the horn move, or here's what the choreography looks like on counts 1, 5, 7, and 9. So that's something that we want to encourage the students to do, is to engage by writing things down, because we know that that's helpful for them in this process of bringing in new information. So I'll pause right there real quick and then see if there's any questions or anything, and then I'll close with how we sync sheet music into that drill file.
Okay. If anybody wants to open their mic up and ask a question or put it in the chat, I'll be glad to read it. Josh, I guess one of the questions I have, what do you suggest is all this information is amazing, and there's, as we both know, learning something new, you're the first thing is you're like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to learn all this? uh, what do you do even with your students for them to learn it? I mean, obviously we just don't say download the app and be ready to go. I mean, what's the process that you have used that you have found to be most effective?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that we recommend, and all of these are different options, and they sort of all achieve the same goals. One of the things that we take a lot of pride in during the summer is either myself or somebody else from our team will spend a significant amount of time doing sort of 30-minute to hour-long sessions with like directors and section leaders to say, hey, here's how you use UDB, here's what we recommend, here's some tips, those kinds of things. And then also answer questions from directors and students about what they, what questions they foresee happening once they roll out with their program. So we try to do as many of those kinds of sort of introductory sessions as we can. We've also got a pretty thorough list of tutorials on YouTube that are, as you said earlier, they're all pretty short, which was very intentional on our part. But, in 1 minute or less, here's how you change the perspective as a performer. In 1 minute or less, here's how you create a custom view, those kinds of things. So, so that's really, those are sort of some of the key things. But one of the things that we've heard from a couple of programs that's been really fun to hear about how they have rolled UDB out for their students is the director will spend time either with us or we'll do some kind of session with the leadership, and the director will say to the leadership, okay, for the new students in the band, we want you guys to, you guys become specialists at how to create custom views like U5. And then U5 are going to come, become specialists on how to sync your sheet music with the drill. And U5 are going to be, you guys are going to talk about how we learn drill here at UT. You guys are going to talk about whatever it is. Because these are all things that you've done before, right? You say like, here's how we read the coordinate sheet. Here's how we read a field. These are the things that are important on our rehearsal field. Like we know that the top of the numbers are 14 and a half steps from the front sideline. So like there's always a little bit of that learning process that already happens. So just replace the paper sheet with UDB and say, okay, cool. So when you open it up, go ahead and create that account for yourself. And then here's how you use UDB, right? And so they, when we have seen that section leaders or when directors sort of task section leaders with, we want you to help teach this to everybody in the band, that the process of buy-in and has been significantly higher. And truth be told, the students, just like us, don't like carrying around coordinate sheets or being responsible for that small piece of paper or even for drill charts, because they've got the information on their phone. They've got access to it at all times. Plus, their time is now better spent. Yep. Because they're able to, instead of I'm just standing here and waiting for Dr. Phillips to tell me if I'm right or wrong, I can study this and I can watch the animation and I can get ahead in the rehearsal. And so that's actually changed the way that we rehearse at UT, so much so that we learn drill now 3 pages at a time, but we let the students do that on their own. So in the tower, we'll say, all right, you've got 2 minutes, everybody go find the next 3 pages. And then they just go and find those dots, because that's one of the things that takes the most amount of time in rehearsals. Like, all right, let's go set up this next page. And then you're just waiting for everybody to be close or perfect or whatever it is. And so we've said, all right, take the next 2 minutes, go find the next 3 pages. When you find that dot, practice your direction change because it shows you that in UDB. Listen to the music, see if you cross the yard line. If you cross the yard line on some certain count, look at that in UDB, say that out loud to yourself. Cool. And then at the end of those 2 minutes, everybody's now back on the starting page. And then we just start rehearsing. We don't have to say like, all right, let's take one set, and everybody face your dot. We don't have to do that anymore because the students already know, am I going to run into somebody in the drill, right? Because UDB would show you that. Versus the alternative is, well, we have to wait and see what it's like in person to see if I run into somebody because I don't know, right? So, so sort of giving the students greater power and greater responsibility in the rehearsal has helped the process of buy-in and the way that the directors can roll this out significantly.
Is there
Uh,
any one thing or one concept that um, the learning process always, you know, a student always has a hard time figuring out and stuff, and then there's always that epiphany, like, oh, okay, so
um, to be honest, I've not seen or heard from people who are saying like, yeah, like the students just don't get this, like, I mean, to be completely honest, like the students are better at this than most directors are because this is where they live, and because this is tactile and they can say like, oh, forward a page, backwards a page, play. I want to add my own notes here, like whatever it is, like, this is a language that they are already fluent in. And so it's just a matter of understanding like, okay, cool. Like this shows me that I'm part of this shape. So let me just stand here and I know that I'm going here next. So I think just like with anything else, there's a short enculturation process where it's like, it's just going to take, it's just different at the very beginning. So it might be a little slower for the first set or two. And the next thing you know, you're like, man, it's lunchtime and we got done with 3 more sets than we planned to, just because you realize that you can go faster. And it's fun. I mean, every time that I'm in rehearsal, and I mean, this has been our brainchild since 2010, and we're going into the 4th year of this version of the app. And it's still astonishing to me when I say like, all right, let's go set up the next page. And like the whole band just starts moving, like, because they've already been staring at the path that they're supposed to take. It's not like they have to uncrumple their, coordinate sheet and then try to okay, side one, what side of the field am I on? Like, because that's like 30 seconds of wasted time,
right.
which times 20 sets, that adds up. So, so we really haven't heard from people about, well, I don't get it, and that's not to say that the product by any means is perfect, but it makes sense for whatever type of learner you are. So if you're a visual learner, you can just watch it and you say, cool, this makes sense. Or if you are more numbers and data driven, you can look at that drop down, that spreadsheet view, and see, what what things look like in sort of a numerical fashion, like, okay, cool, big step size, small, hold, small, huge, small, or whatever it is, right? Um, so, um, so yeah, we feel like sort of regardless of learning style, this has been adopted pretty quickly by, last year alone, we had almost 2,000 bands just in the U.S. alone using UDB to learn their drill. So it's working for a few people so far.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the spot. I think us older guys are thinking more of the learning curve that's going to happen, and the students are just jumping into it because you're right. This is the tool that they grew up with, they know, and they can maneuver, and sometimes they can figure out even better ways to use the tool than we can. Okay.
Yeah, and it's fun to see students say like, hey, Professor Gall, like, did you know UDB can do this? I'm like, well, I built it. So like, yes, I knew it could do that, but I'm excited that you're excited, so whatever it might be. So, but yeah, I mean, allowing the students that time to explore, and I tell you that the amount of time now that we'll say like, cool, like rehearsal's going well, we're ahead of schedule. Like everybody just take like a 5-minute water break and just go find some shade and just watch the drill for the next thing that we're about to learn. That allows them to relax, get out of that mode, but like they're still cranking, you're still working on these things. And that can be really, really helpful with just the pace and the morale of rehearsal because the students feel like their time's better spent now.
Yeah. All right, let's talk music.
Cool. So let me jump back in and share my screen and I'll show you music sheet, which is probably one of the more robust features inside of UDB. So I've already opened this up, so let me show this back to where it normally is. So are you seeing my screen again?
Yep, you're good.
All right. So like we've seen up to this point by default, over on the right side of the screen, we've got play, plus for forward, minus for backwards, C for count mode, and then I for instructions. Now, truth be told, the instructions are something that you really only need sort of the first time that you learn it. It's not something you normally reference time and time and time again, especially given the fact that you can just press play and watch what the drill is supposed to do. You don't necessarily need to know that it's, you know, that it's 16 counts, because the top of UDB shows you that it's 16 counts. You don't necessarily need the instructions to tell you that it's counts measures 1 through 4, because the title bar shows you that. So what we've done is we've replaced, or we've built in the ability for you to replace the instructions with a quick shortcut to access your music sheet or your sheet music. So I'm going to press and hold the I button in the bottom right corner, and you'll see that like a little 8th note pops up. And I've already brought in a PDF of the music, just to save a little bit of time. But this PDF I brought in from Dropbox, right? And you can bring it in from Google Drive. You could bring it in from your email. You could bring it in from Canvas or Blackboard or wherever your music is. And what's cool about this is, of course, like if I press play, I'll hear the music playing from the Pyware file or the UDB file, right? And then I can also follow along on the PDF. So that's cool, right? Now, sort of where the magic is that one of the pains for us in the marching band world is, okay, I've got my drill here and I've got my music here, and we're working on page 17. So let me go to that here. And then I got to find page 17 in my music. And like, I have to sort of manage two things and keeping them in sync all the time. So we've built something called drill tabs inside of a UDB app. So I'm going to just get back to page 35 real quick. And you'll see down in the bottom right corner of the screen, there's play, plus, minus, and then like a little pin icon, which just stands for edit. So I'm going to tap on the edit icon. And then the second thing down that looks like a little lollipop is what we call a drill tab. I'm going to tap on this. And what I've done, or what we've done inside UDB, is we've allowed for you to mark up this PDF so that you can signify where in the PDF your drill lines up. So for the purposes of this example, I'm going to just put them on different staves, just to be a little quicker. But you'll see I've signified that page 35 starts at the very beginning on the first stave. I'll go to edit, new drill tab. This is going to be for page 36. And we've used 3 different colors: green for like go or move, red for hold, and yellow for like mark time or choreography. So however you want to signify those things. But I'm going to add a red drill tab for page 36. I'm going to say that that is there. I'll save that. Move down to the next stave. Let's go to page, I'm going to create a drill tab for page 37. Just for fun, I'll make that yellow. Right. And then I'll save that. And then I'll put in a drill tab for page 38. And I'll make that green again. So what's cool about this is that, now if I'm looking at the music and I'm reading the music off of my phone, and just a disclaimer, of course, I'm signed in as a student, so I'm looking at, like a regular part. If I'm signed in as a director, you can do this with a score, right? Which for directors, a standard tune might be 8 or 9 pages long, because it's, of course, a score. So we're looking at all the instruments, and there's maybe only 7 or 8 bars per page at the most in some instances. So it's particularly helpful for directors. But for students, what's cool about this is, I can switch back and forth easily from the music to the drill. Right. And you'll see right now we're on page 35 in the drill. When I go to the music, page 35 drill tab is at the top of the screen. Let's pretend now that we're working on page 37 in the drill. When I go to my music, you'll see that it takes me to that spot of the PDF, right? So now I'm always in sync. I've spent that 30 seconds to put in my drill tabs for that song, but I'm always in sync from drill to music. So again, think about this from a director's perspective. I'm teaching the drill for the very beginning of the song, right? and I want to go to my music, it knows what page to take me to, and it's already highlighted. It's already says, okay, the whole band moves here, or the whole band holds here, right? Or you're working on drill for 10 pages later. You don't have to go to another app and then switch pages. You just flip back over, go back to that drill, or go into the sheet music, and you're at that spot, right? So taking those 30 seconds, 45 seconds, even a minute, or however long it would take for you to put in the drill tabs is going to save you infinite time later in the rehearsal process and just make you more sane. So it's going to keep you more organized, and you can still do all of the things that you'd want to do, excuse me, with this, you could go in and annotate on this if you'd like, if you want to. Oftentimes directors will say this and say like guys, code red, this thing's got to be better, like, let's do this. Whoops, sorry. All right, that's got to be better at rehearsal. Or, hey, trombones, you guys remember that part that you used to play? Yeah, it goes like this now, right? So you've got the ability to annotate on these things. We've got musical symbols in here, so that you could add new shaping or emphasize or do whatever you'd like, all on that PDF, and that pertains directly to your device and to your account. So if I open this up on my iPad, all of these things are going to show up. So the ability of syncing your sheet music as a student and also as a director can save you tremendous amounts of time and just help further contextualize, okay, here's what the music looks like, here's what the audio sounds like, here's what the drill looks like. And we don't have to guess anymore as students. We don't have to say like, I think maybe this is mezzo forte. I don't know, I'll just play until he tells me I'm too loud, So bringing the sheet music in is something that's really, really helpful for students. And it's something that you only have to do once. Once you bring that PDF in, it's attached to that drill file, and then you're set.
I'm waiting to see where, you're teaching in Texas. Where's the metronome?
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. That's on our list of things to do.
Gotcha.
So,
all right, man. Thank you so much. In the last 2 hours, man, it's so much information to take in. I know you're going to send me a file on short tutorials that I can not only with directors, but students.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have this recorded, whether you liked it or not, and we're going to share it with our students as part of their onboarding for band camp and such.
Yeah.
And I cannot thank you enough for participating today and ending the day with me and our students and teachers here. And any last words?
Thanks again for the time.